Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Saturday's show. No warnings or advisories out anywhere around the state. Public-wise, are some gales out along the North Gulf Coast on down toward the areas of the southeast coast, at least for tonight and possibly into tomorrow, and then those will end. And on the satellite out to the west, here's the next system that warm front spread rain and fog, but not much in the way of wind into the western Aleutians there at Chimney. You can see that trails all the way back down into Japan, and on the southern part of the picture there, that's a hurricane that moved inland, came up from the south there. Looks like it may have weakened into a tropical storm possibly, but you can see all that moisture is feeding right into those southwest winds that's entraining it up to the northeast. And on the GOES satellite here over the northeast Pacific, you can see quite a band of moisture in over the southern part of mainland Alaska here, but not as much precipitation. The heaviest rain, of course, occurring along the coast up into the eastern Kenai Peninsula areas, western Prince William Sound. Some of that spilled over the mountains there through the pass, and Portage Valley picked up about 4.5 inches of rain in the last 24 hours. That was actually a 24-hour amount that ended at 4 a.m. this morning. But the main push here into the northeast or into the southern southeast coast, that's where the heaviest rainfall was occurring. And we had gale force winds all along the North Gulf Coast today, back just as far south as about Cape Edgecombe. Then you had small craft advisory south of there, but seeing winds gust up to about 35 miles an hour, Annette, Ketchikan, and those areas with rain. And heaviest rainfall amounts, Yakutat about 1.5 inches in the 24-hour period ending at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Otherwise, we had 3/4 of an inch at Sitka there on the central southeast coast. They're still raining this afternoon, temperature 60 degrees. Annette had about 2/3 of an inch, as did Seward. And both Kodiak and Juneau picked up about 1/2 inch. So rain, pretty soaking rains anyway here all along the coastal areas right back into Kodiak, but that cut off dramatically as you move northward, kind of hit and miss in the Susitna Valley. Most light rain back toward the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Chalitna carried some rain today. Breaking out, good sunshine up here to the north once again, and those easterly winds pulling that warm air all the way out to Kotzebue Sound into the lower 70s there from the Selawik Valley on out to Kotzebue, as well as Buckland seeing lower 70s. Still pretty gusty winds, but not as strong as they had been. 15 gusts, 30 miles an hour up there along the Arctic coast, and you can see the low clouds in over the north slope during the day. That began to break out a little bit here in the afternoon, but stayed socked in, especially on the eastern areas. The low clouds did. Just some areas of fog on the central and eastern coast. Areas of sunshine broke out on the east side there, and you can see all the clearing here up into the northwest valleys. Not a bad day, just cirrus there over the Seward Peninsula. That allowed temperatures to rise up to near 70 degrees. That band of moisture pulling back off to the west and southwest that moved up there yesterday and overnight. Just some scattered showers here over the southwest interior, and the rain with this front all along the North Gulf Coast and back into the Panhandle. See a wave pushing northward here, keeping it wet and windy over a good portion of the southeast coastal areas there. The main low here south-southwest of Kodiak Island or Sitkinak, right in that location. Showers, more showery conditions or more showery nature to the precipitation here along the Alaska Peninsula. Very light rain or drizzle with areas of fog back up into the Bering Sea, and northwest winds kind of in a narrow area here from the greater Dutch Harbor area back to about Atka in the 20 gusts, 35 mile per hour range, and then they drop off here, some weak ridging ahead of that next warm front spreading the moisture in the far western areas, And tonight that'll move right into the Adak-Atka area, so, and there'll be IFR along with it. Looks like the front will pass across Shemya. Rain will cut off and kind of breezy out there with winds west-southwest 15 to 25 miles an hour. Main precipitation here, western Cook Inlet on up to the Alaska Range with the lowest conditions on the eastern slopes, and tapering off up to the north, just some scattered showers up along the central and eastern Alaska Range, maybe the Wrangell Mountains. Variable clouds here over the central interior, and a lot less of that as you go north, but the low clouds still hanging on to the eastern Arctic coast. And those gusty winds continuing 15 to 30 miles an hour up there along the entire stretch of the coastline. Probably a little stronger here on the west side than on the eastern end. And very light winds, again, will continue here from the Bering Strait right on down into Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula. And another frontal system developing. Another one moves through and dissipates. This one will develop and pull northward. So late tonight, the rain will increase again, and possibly the winds as well, but looks like the strongest winds will stay to the west, although could possibly reach gale force tomorrow in the 30 to 35 knot range along the south coast. Possibly, definitely rain spreading back in over the area. Again, heavier down to the south. Rain, occasional rain, Elfin Cove to Yakutat, and over to about Cordova, a little drier over Prince William Sound tomorrow. Scattered showers in over the southeast interior, McCarthy on down the Wrangell Mountains in those areas, maybe up to Nebezna. Scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms over the eastern Tanana Valley, and then back to the south, just a risk of an afternoon shower developing up over the Kobuk Valley and the northern Seward Peninsula. Low clouds burning off to at least a partly sunny afternoon for the North Slope, and cloudy skies, breezy along the Arctic coast, but those continued offshore winds keeping it sunny here over much of the northwest part of the state. Breaking out some breaks in the sky here, sun breaks over Bristol Bay, as well as the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta areas, and even the Kuskokwim Valley could see a little bit of sun, just some isolated showers around. That system out to the west now, spreading rain up to about Nikolsky tomorrow afternoon. And winds will remain light out in advance of that system here with high pressure over the Alaska Peninsula. And that's going to begin to push this system off to the northeast tomorrow afternoon late, and that'll push that front finally through the southeast coast on Monday. Monday we'll see. There it goes. Actually, it doesn't go through. It takes another day or two to get through there. We have a weakening frontal boundary here along the southeast coast, so the rain mostly over the northern areas there pulls back to the west a little bit, so this high pressure will nudge up and probably dry it out. Maybe some sunshine, warmer conditions over the Craig, Klawock areas, Metlakatla, and Stewart, and those areas staying wet up here to the coast. Showers, numerous showers along the North Gulf Coast of that leftover moisture. Weak low in the interior, scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms once again. No change to the north. Sunniest conditions will be up that way. Back to the northwest, but there'll still be some partly sunny skies here all the way down to the Alaska Range, even partially clearing out over Cook Inlet, much like today here for the south central Alaska areas, and then scattered showers for Monday here over the southwest interior. This front edging up to the coastline now. Rain into the Alaska Peninsula late tomorrow night and Monday, tapering off to showers back to the west there. Maybe some clearing around Unalaska, gusty west winds, and wet conditions with the central Aleutians, but still breezy up along the Arctic coast there, especially on the west side here. Point Lay, for example, look for gusts 30, 35 miles an hour at the highest, with less winds elsewhere along the coast, but southeast winds not picking up too much, maybe in the 20 knot range for these marine areas along the southwest coast. Higher gusts, Cold Bay could reach 25 knots from the southeast, otherwise more in the 15 to 20 knot range or less here for the peninsula. A little brisk out toward the central Aleutians. Temperatures this afternoon, upper 50s to near 60 at Sitka, one of the warmer locations this afternoon, but a lot of clouds and rain covering this whole area, keeping the temperature pattern pretty uniform. 60 degrees Cordova, 68 at McCarthy, 69 both at Gulkana and up at Northway, 77 degrees there at Fairbanks. That and Golovin right there were the warm spots in the state here at 4 p.m. with 77 degrees, 71 at Teller, and 70s again all the way out from the coast there, the Bering Strait, right into the eastern interior. a cooler 52 up at Anaktuvik, and 40 to 45 along the Arctic coast, except Barrow at 38, 57 at Shishmaref, and that's 73 Red Dog, 69 at Nome, and 65 St. Michael, with 72 in McGrath, 66 down at, I think that was, actually that's Bethel there. Should be a little farther to the southeast. 66 also at St. Mary's, at 61 at Makoriak, and 48 at Savunga. Mid-50s, lower to mid-50s for the Pribilofs. Adak up to 57, back down to 52 with the clouds and rain, both at Shimia and Atka, although not so much in the way of rain there. 53 in Unalaska, 50s, lower 60s for the Alaska Peninsula. Lows tonight, 30s, North Slope Arctic coast. 50s through much of the western part of the state, including the Aleutians. 50s also for the southeast coast. 40s, Copper River Basin, on up into the eastern interior. Highs tomorrow, again 70s here. Might push up near 80 in the Noatak Valley tomorrow. 70 near Nome, all the way southward to Kuskokwim Bay and eastward to the border, with 40s along the Arctic coast, but the North Slope 50s to lower 60s, and 60s, lower 70s over south central Alaska, and even much of the southeast coast tomorrow, pushing up into the lower 60s. Flying weather, all the IFR right up along the coastline and offshore, with marginal VFR occasionally in over the eastern areas, and then right up along the coastline here, marginal VFR, with the IFR for the most part remaining offshore. It may catch the east side of Kodiak Island there, but for the most part only looking at some marginal conditions pushing up along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, possibly not reaching as far north as Rainy Pass, and then some isolated thunderstorms developing in over the interior with VFR conditions until you reach the Arctic coast. IFR off the coast there across the Pribilofs, and a big area IFR over the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. Anaktuvik will remain VFR tomorrow, likely Monday as well for both Adigan and Anaktuvik. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR at times on the eastern entrances, VFR to the west. VFR also for Rainy. Still could hold on to some marginal VFR, possibly on the western entrance, but it could become all VFR in the afternoon. Windy will be VFR the entire day, as well as Isabel and Mentasta. Tanita wide open. Portage, gradual improvement here on the eastern entrance from IFR to marginal VFR, and the west entrance may go from marginal to VFR. Chilkoot and White, marginal times, and the freezing levels again, really 8,000 feet about covers it here from the eastern Bering Sea right over into northwest Canada. 2,000 feet warmer over the southern Panhandle, and then here's where the gradient is out over the west central Bering Sea. Icing again with those high freezing levels, you're going to have to get up to about 12,000 feet to see any here with that incoming front in the Aleutians, and roughly 10,000 feet and up here over the southeast coast. And if you get that high, you're likely to see some occasional, possibly see some occasional light to isolated moderate rime icing there. Southeast coast up into the southeast interior, and a band extending westward and across the Barren Islands. And for the winds aloft charts, again, kind of a wavy pattern here. Low pressure pushing its way into the western Bering tomorrow, and eventually that's going to push this trough off to the northeast, and Monday and Tuesday, and then improving for the Panhandle Wednesday, and then once this comes across, it'll be probably back into the rain toward the middle or latter part of the week. But anyway, everything moving from west to east here. At 9,000 feet tomorrow, southeasterlies 35 knots for the North Gulf Coast, and lighter on up to the north southwest, 20 to 30 knots, up to 45 knots for the western Aleutians. Strongest winds out there as well at 3,000 feet. Still pretty brisk here along the North Gulf Coast, southeast 35. Coming in toward the Prince of Wales Island area, that could produce some stronger surface winds there tomorrow afternoon, with moderate turbulence right along the coastline, pretty smooth over the central and southern interior, and then heavier stuff coming in way out to the west. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
The National Weather Service supplies instruments to measure air temperatures. The wet and dry bulb temperature shelter and the sling psychrometer use muslin wicking wetted with distilled water or the purest water available. If the apparent wind is under 9 knots, you must whirl the psychrometer. The passage of air over the wet bulb will provide sufficient evaporation for an accurate reading. The temperature will drop quite rapidly and then more slowly. Read the thermometer as soon as possible after ventilation has stopped and report the lowest reading observed on the form. The code card specifies the format for recording this information, as well as the dew point. Dew point is the temperature at which the air becomes saturated with moisture. It's determined from a table using the wet bulb temperature and the wet bulb depression, the difference between the dry and wet bulb readings.
In addition to the sling psychrometer on board ships, they often use a temperature shelter for the determination of wet and dry bulb temperatures. Now you got to remember to keep the reservoir here filled with water so as you can avoid an erroneous reading on the wet bulb temperature. Now in this area, the determination of dew point doesn't seem too important. But up north, it's of vital importance in the prediction of fog.
Sea level pressure is probably the most important measurement requiring great precision in observing. It is an excellent predictor of changing weather conditions. The pressure aneroid barometer is the standard pressure reading instrument for voluntary observing ships. It's installed and maintained by the National Weather Service. Pressure readings are recorded in millibars.
Barometric pressure is probably the single most important piece of data that can be supplied by a ship for giving meteorological data. Now, the barometric pressure is important because it is what drives the wind field, and the wind field is what creates the waves. And obviously, the waves are of most importance to the mariner himself. Now, when you go to read the barometer, make sure that you're standing directly opposite the dial and you're looking straight down on the dial. Traditionally, mariners have also, they can't keep their fingers off it and they give it a few taps to settle the needle, which may have been stuck. After that, be sure you get an accurate reading and record it in the appropriate code on the format.
The recording device is called the barograph. It produces a permanent record of sea level pressure over time, called the barogram. The paper must be renewed once every 4 days when the clock is rewound.
The barograph differs from the barometer only in one aspect. It records the actual barometric pressure on a revolving drum and an ink point pen. Now this gives an indication of a rise, a fall, or a steady state of the barometric pressure. In this case, in the last few hours, you can see a significant drop in the barometric pressure of about 2 millibars.
Barogram trends are compared to the code card and reported as the appropriate number. Sea temperature is an important observation for the meteorologist and oceanographer. Reading the temperature of the ship's condenser intake water is the most popular method.
Yeah, third, can you please give me the sea temperature?
Remember, all temperatures are reported in Celsius. It's most important for the observer to include as many groups in the synoptic code as possible. If any information is not available, such as when observing at night, include as much data as you can and code your weather message by using slashes for missing data. Do not transmit groups that contain all slashes. Your weather observations are important. It's best to transmit reports as soon as possible after the observation has been taken. But if ship operations prevent transmission at or near the reporting hour, send the report as soon as you can. All reports begin with the code BBXX, the indicator for weather reports from a sea station. This is followed by the ship's radio call sign. This allows the communications network to route the data to the appropriate file for marine observations and to give credit to the ship for submitting the report. Ship's weather observations can be sent to the National Weather Service through U.S. Coast Guard stations, Inmarsat Coast Earth stations, and commercial shore radio stations. All completed ship's weather observation forms should be saved and mailed to your port meteorological officer using the provided postage-paid envelopes. These records are archived and made available to meteorologists and climatologists for research. Professional publications such as Marine Pilot Charts use the data as well. This is a never-ending process of collection, analysis, and forecasting. The marine weather forecast depends on the data collected by volunteer ship observers. Commercial ship routing services use it to plot the safest and most efficient course, since time is money for shipping companies. Scientists use the information to learn more about the oceans. The maritime community is particularly sensitive to and dependent on the weather. The accuracy of a high seas forecast is crucial to maintaining safety and meeting time schedules. Your participation is a vital element of this information gathering network. You will receive great satisfaction from participating in this program by knowing that your efforts result in safety for all those who go down to the sea in ships.
Well, that's about it as far as reporting weather at sea goes. Remember, accuracy and timeliness of delivery. Only you know what the weather's like at your position at sea. Record it and report it.
Welcome back. Small craft advisories tomorrow here with that front still off the coast and could get even higher than this tomorrow depending on how strong and how far west or east that next wave is. It comes up from the south, but it looks like 25 knot winds at least into Clarence Strait there, otherwise 20 knotters on up to the north. And then dropping back, not only no gales, no small craft advisories in store for Monday's forecast here. Still up to 20 knots on the south coast, lighter to the north, and in the 10 to 15 knot range there over the inside waters. For the North Gulf Coast, 25 knots out of the east after the gales end tonight, and then northeasterlies about 25, only 15 knots there along the east side of Kodiak Island, maybe up to 20 for Shelikof Strait, all from the north. That extends right up into Cook Inlet, and then those Turnagain winds blowing out of Turnagain Arm there, 20 to 25 knots. And then after the 20 knots tomorrow there for Prince William Sound, coming down to 15, all easterly now here, 20 knots North Gulf Coast, 15 to light winds here, all around Kodiak Island, variable to northeast for Shelikof Strait. Kind of an easterly breeze right in across the Barren Islands into Kamishak Bay. Variable 10 or 10 to 15 for much of the inlet, and then probably looking at some stronger east-southeasterlies, maybe 35 knots coming out of the arm, 25 knots from the northern inlet. For the Bristol Bay zone tomorrow, northeast at 10, very light winds here across the Alaska Peninsula, predominantly from the northwest, 5 to 10 knots, 15 there southwest of Kodiak Island. And then on Monday, kind of coming around a little bit here, southeast, I call it 15 knots instead of the 5 to 10 I have here. Definitely in the higher gusts there, places like Cold Bay could see gusts 20, 25 knots. Southeasterlies 10 to 15 up to the northeast and for Bristol Bay. For the Aleutians tomorrow, small craft advisories here for the western areas of the eastern Aleutians of the Fox Islands, but otherwise 15 to 20 knot winds and southwest 20 knots until you get out to Shimia. The next system picking them up to small craft advisories at low center actually 25 to even maybe 30 knots. And then on Monday, that low center slides eastward here just north of Adak and Atka. So south, they're going to see some pretty brisk winds at about 30 knots, but then closer to the low center, just 15 knots, and southwest 20 knots, becoming a little variable and lighter over the eastern Aleutians, and small craft advisories out here to the west. For the southwest coast, tomorrow, light variable winds here, like we saw today. Northeast about 10 for St. Lawrence Island, southeast for the northern Bering Sea, south 10 for the Pribilofs. And then the stronger winds as that front comes through will be Sunday night, and then dropping back to 15 knots Monday, especially Monday afternoon. But front should hang together enough to keep 20-knot winds here for the southwest coast. Easterlies at 20 knots across the northern Bering Sea, including St. Lawrence Island, seas running 4 to 6 feet. Up along the Arctic coast, small craft advisories everywhere except from Tin City up to Point Hope, where they'll be easterly at 20 knots. And then for Monday, strongest winds here on the western areas, 30 knots, 20 knots for the central coast, 25-knot small craft advisories from the east-northeast there on the east side. For tonight, again, another front developing. The first one dissipates out like the one did overnight last night. Another one comes up to replace it, so more rain and wind heading northward. Not too bad out here in the west. Pretty nice up over the central interior. There's a next system coming in from the west that pushes eastward, and we'll see on Monday, low pressure dominates the entire Bering Sea and Aleutians, pushing the front and some rain up to the southwest coast. Otherwise, variable cloud scattered showers over the southern half of the state, mostly sunny to the north. This front weakening, and will finally move through tomorrow night, or Monday night and Tuesday.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.